When most people close their eyes and try to picture hell, they see fire, walls of it, rivers of it, columns of orange and red climbing into a black sky. This image is so thoroughly baked into Western culture that it feels less like a theological position and more like a simple fact of nature. Hell is hot, heaven is cool and luminous, and that is simply how the geography of the afterlife works. You learned it from a sermon or a painting or a movie or a throwaway joke. You absorbed it so early that you never questioned it. Hell burns. Everyone knows this. Hieronymus Bosch knew something different. Bosch, the 15th century Flemish painter who spent his career charting the territories of sin and punishment with an almost scientific diligence, looked at hell and saw two things. He saw the fire. Yes, he did. He was a medieval man, and he had absorbed the same theological currents as everyone else. But he also saw ice. He saw a frozen lake. He saw people skating in circles on its surface, their movements mechanical and purposeless, their faces wearing the particular blank expression of people who have been doing the same thing for so long that they forgot why they started. He saw a figure who had fallen through the ice, clutching an oversized skate, trying to drag himself back up onto the surface, and failing. He saw dismembered heads lying on the ice like dropped luggage. You look at the burning section of Bosch's Hell panel, part of his monumental triptych known as the Garden of Earthly Delights, painted sometime around 1490 to 1510. And you feel the appropriate mixture of horror and aesthetic distance. The fire is spectacular. It is the hell you recognise, the hell you have been culturally prepared for, and that familiarity creates a kind of buffer. You can observe it. You can marvel at the grotesque inventiveness of the tortures. You can appreciate the brushwork. You remain, in some essential sense, a spectator. But then your eyes drift to the frozen lake and something shifts. The spectacle disappears. The grotesque elaborateness disappears. What you are left with is something quieter, more mundane, more, and this is the word that keeps insisting on itself, more administrative, cold, purposeless, going nowhere. And suddenly you feel less sure that you are a spectator anymore. To understand what Bosch was doing, you have to understand something about the world he lived in. And specifically, you have to understand something about cold. Hieronymus Bosch was born around 1450 in the town of Hertogenbosch, in what is now the Netherlands. He lived there his entire life, died there in 1516 and painted there during the period historians now call the Little Ice Age. A centuries-long cooling of the European climate that reached one of its most pronounced phases precisely during Bosch's lifetime. Average temperatures across northern Europe were lower than they are today. Winters were longer, harder, and more reliably savage. The rivers froze, the canals froze, people froze. So to imagine hell as hot would be a pleasant holiday daydream. There were no central heating systems, no insulated walls and double glazing, no electric blanket. There was fire. A hearth if you were fortunate enough to have one, and fortunate enough to have wood to feed it. And there was everything else, which was cold, and there were no hot showers. The hot shower is when you strip away the almost incomprehensible luxury, a daily ritual of warmth, cleanliness, and private comfort that would have been utterly alien to every human being who lived before the late 19th century, and practically inaccessible to most people who lived before the mid-20th. For the citizens of medieval and early modern Europe, cold owned the world. Warmth was the exception. The fire you gathered around, the bed you huddled in, the brief reprieve of summer that you knew. Bosch grew up inside this reality. He painted inside it. When he looked for images of suffering, he had only to glance out the window. Cold was right there. Cold was always right there. The Garden of Earthly Delights is 3 panels. You probably know it, or at least you know fragments of it. It is the kind of painting that leaks into the culture, that gets reproduced on tote bags and album covers, and the walls of college dormitories without most people quite knowing where it comes from or what it means. The left panel shows paradise, the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, God presenting Eve to Adam with an expression of almost paternal satisfaction, a fountain rising in the background, animals of startling variety wandering peacefully through an impossibly lush garden. It is serene. It is also, if you look closely, already strange. The animals carry a wrongness in their proportions. The light feels slightly off, as if this paradise is already, somehow, slightly contaminated by what it is going to become. The central panel is the famous one, the overwhelming one, the one that looks like a fever dream, assembled from the combined unconscious of the entire human race. It shows humanity in the midst of its earthly pleasures. And Bosch's conception of earthly pleasure is so extravagant, so carnivalesque, so deliriously inventive, that the word pleasure barely seems adequate. Thousands of tiny figures cavort across the scene. They ride enormous birds and fish. They climb in and out of translucent globes. They arrange themselves into configurations that are at once erotic and absurd. Enormous fruit functions as architecture. A man disappears into a flower. Everything is happening at once, and all of it is happening with a kind of desperate, slightly manic energy, as if everyone in the painting knows, on some level, that the party is finite. Before we go further into the painting, we need to sit with the history of cold for a moment, because that history illuminates something essential about what Bosch was saying and about why we have so thoroughly forgotten how to hear it. For the vast majority of human history, cold killed. It killed crops and it killed livestock and it killed people. It killed them quickly when they were caught in storms or fell through ice or were unable to find shelter. It killed them slowly through the long, grinding attrition of hypothermia, through the diseases that thrived in cold, damp conditions, through the malnutrition that followed failed harvests. A severe winter was catastrophe. It could reduce a village, a region, a country. The medieval fear of cold was visceral and well-founded, and it had a theological dimension that we have largely lost track of. Christianity inherited from the ancient world a conception of hell as fire, the Gehenna of the New Testament, the burning valleys outside Jerusalem where trash and corpses were consumed. But medieval theology was more capacious than this single image. Dante, writing about a century and a half before Bosch's birth, placed his deepest hell in ice, the ninth circle of the Inferno, the lowest, the worst, reserved for the ultimate sinners, those who had betrayed their masters and their kin, is a frozen lake called Cocytus. Satan himself is frozen in it, up to his chest, his three mouths eternally chewing Judas, Brutus and Cassius. Dante's choice was deliberate and theologically sophisticated. Fire in the medieval scheme was active. Fire was energy. Even the fire of hell represented a kind of relationship. A punishing relationship, but a relationship still, between the damned and the divine. Ice was something else. Ice was the absolute withdrawal of warmth, of love, of connection. Ice was the condition of perfect isolation. To be frozen was to be utterly, permanently alone. Bosch knew Dante, he knew the theological tradition, and he knew his own winters. When he painted that frozen lake, he was drawing on a deep reservoir of fear, the medieval fear of cold as death, as abandonment, as the withdrawal of God's warmth from the world. He was painting something his contemporaries would have recognized in their bones, because their bones had felt it. Every winter, the world became hostile. Every winter, warmth became something you had to fight for, something that could be taken from you, something whose absence could kill you. The frozen lake in hell was a literal intensification of something they already feared. Bone deep, immediate and real. But here is the thing about Bosch's frozen figures that makes the image so uncanny, so persistent, so difficult to shake. They are skating. They are free of agony, free of demons. They are skating, gliding across the ice, going in circles, doing the thing that people in the Netherlands did on frozen canals and rivers in winter. The perfectly ordinary leisure activity of a cold northern people during the Little Ice Age. And that ordinariness is the point. That ordinariness is what makes it hell. Think about what skating in circles actually means. It means movement without destination. It means effort without progress. It means the form of activity with a complete absence of its substance. You are doing something. Your legs are moving. You are burning energy. You are going somewhere, except you are going nowhere. You are returning always to where you started. The circuit closes on itself, and tomorrow you will do it again, and the day after, and every day repeating, forever. Bosch's contemporaries would have recognized skating as a seasonal, temporary pleasure, something you did while the ice lasted, until the thaw came, and the world opened again and you could go somewhere. The horror of the hell version is the absence of thaw. The ice doesn't melt, the spring doesn't come. You skate your circles forever in the grey cold light, and there is no reason to stop because there is no reason to continue. And the distinction between those two things has been eroded by an eternity of going round and round. And then there is the figure at the ice's edge, the one who has fallen through, who is clutching the oversized skate, trying to pull himself back up. This figure is doing something that looks, on the surface, like effort, like agency, like the refusal to accept his situation. He is trying to get out, but look at what he's holding. He's holding the skate. He's holding the very instrument that put him on the ice in the first place, the thing that carried him around his pointless circles, and he is using it, or trying to use it, as a tool of rescue. He is trying to save himself with the instrument of his own entrapment. He will fail. The ice will take him again. The skate will betray him again. He will slip back in, or he will haul himself out and go back to skating his circles, which amounts to the same thing. And lying around him on the ice are dismembered heads, detached, silent, just lying there on the ice like objects, like items someone dropped and abandoned. The casualness of the dismemberment is more disturbing than any dramatic depiction of violence could be. These heads are not a spectacle, they are furniture. There is a concept that Hannah Arendt famously described in the 20th century, the banality of evil. She used it to describe a specific historical phenomenon, the way that tremendous atrocity can be carried out not by monsters, but by functionaries, by people performing administrative tasks, by people following procedures, by people who have made themselves into instruments of a system and surrendered their individual moral judgment to the demands of routine. The horror is not dramatic. The horror is ordinary. The horror is the form of purposeful activity in the complete absence of any genuine purpose. The frozen section of his hell is a hell of procedure, of going through the motions, of doing what you have always done because you have always done it, because the alternative would require a kind of rupture, a kind of awakening. And the ice has a way of making awakening seem more dangerous than continued skating. The fire in the other section of the panel says, "You are being punished." The ice says something different. The ice says, "You are simply continuing. You are simply going round." This is the hell that requires no demons. This is the hell that runs itself. No one is forcing the skaters to skate. They skate because they skate, because the ice is there, because the skates are on, because everyone else is skating. Because stopping would require a decision, and decisions require a self capable of deciding, and something about the cold has been working on that self for a very long time. Bosch understood, in a way that his era's theological vocabulary barely equipped him to articulate, but that his painter's eye saw clearly, that there are two kinds of damnation. There is the damnation of active suffering, the fire, the torture, the dramatic encounter with one's own wrongdoing. And there is the damnation of passive continuation, the ice, the circles, the life that is technically being lived but has somehow misplaced the quality that makes life worth living. He knew which one was worse. We need to spend a moment with the physical reality of cold in Bosch's world, because this physical reality is the ground from which the metaphysical fear grows. It is worth dwelling on the relationship between Dante and Bosch, because it illuminates the intellectual tradition that Bosch was working within, and, perhaps more interestingly, where he diverged from it. Dante's ice is a place of fixed punishment. The sinners in Cocytus are frozen, bodily frozen in the ice, held in place by it, preserved in their torment. They cannot move. They cannot skate. The ice is prison. The ice is stasis. The defining quality of Dante's frozen hell is immobility. These are people who cannot go anywhere, cannot do anything, cannot change or progress, or even continue to decline. They are held. Bosch's ice is different. His sinners move, they skate, they circle, they fall, and attempt to climb out. They are frozen in pattern, not in place. The imprisonment is one of will, not of the body. Dante imprisons the flesh. Bosch imprisons the soul's ability to choose. This distinction is theologically and psychologically significant. Dante's hell is about consequence. Each punishment is fitted precisely to each sin. Each form of suffering reflects and intensifies the particular failure of each sinner. The frozen sinners in Cocytus are there because they betrayed, and betrayal is a freezing of the human bond, a withdrawal of warmth from relationship. Their punishment makes literal what they made metaphorical. Bosch is doing something more ambiguous, more modern, and in some ways more disturbing. His skaters skate without accusation. They are simply there. The relationship between what they did and what they are doing is the loose, terrible relationship of habit. They are doing in eternity what they apparently could not stop doing in life. There is a whole theology of habits buried in that frozen lake. The medieval tradition, drawing on Aristotle and Aquinas, understood virtue and vice as habits of the soul, patterns worn into the self by repeated choice, grooves that got deeper with each pass, until they became channels that directed every subsequent choice, automatically, without deliberation. To be vicious in this tradition was to become the kind of person who made choices so long ago that the choosing was over, the choices had been made, the patterns were set, the groove was too deep to escape. Bosch paints the afterlife of that habit. He paints what the groove looks like from the outside, when there is no longer any pretense that tomorrow might be different. People skating circles forever, in the cold. Here is the strangest thing about Bosch's frozen hell. It has gotten more relevant in the 5 centuries since he painted it. When logic says it should have faded, we have conquered cold, central heating, hot showers, insulated buildings, synthetic materials that trap warmth against the body. We have built a world in which, for a large and fortunate portion of humanity, cold is a minor inconvenience, a preference, something you adjust with a thermostat. The visceral, bodily fear of cold that gave Bosch's frozen hell its immediate power for his original audience has been largely diffused. We are warm. We are safe from cold in a way that would have seemed miraculous to people who died in Flemish winters. And yet the image has never felt more familiar, because we built our warmth, our comfort, our safety from cold, by creating systems of immense complexity and efficiency. And those systems run on exactly the kind of mechanical, repetitive, purposeless motion that Bosch put on his frozen lake. We have built the most elaborate ice rink in history, and we are skating it very smoothly. Think about what constitutes a normal working life for a large proportion of the population of the developed world. Work that consists of going through established motions, following established procedures, attending meetings whose purpose is to schedule further meetings, producing documents that are consumed by other documents, advancing metrics whose relationship to any human good has been attenuated beyond recovery. Think about the specific quality of that experience. The cold comfort of a full calendar. The numbness that comes from doing the same things so many times that the question of why you are doing them stops rising. The skaters on Bosch's ice are free of agony. That is the thing that matters. Agony would be enlivening, in a way. Agony demands response, demands attention, demands some form of reckoning with one's situation. The skaters are past agony. They are in a condition somewhat less dramatic and somewhat harder to escape. They are simply going round and round and round, and it is cold, and there is no reason to stop. And then the heads. The dismembered heads lying on the ice like dropped fruit. In the burning section of the hell panel, dismemberment is dramatic. It is happening. It is in process. It is attached to specific torments with specific agents. In the frozen section, it is already done. It is aftermath. The heads have already been separated from bodies, and some time ago clearly, and now they lie on the ice, part of the scene. This is the rhetoric of the done thing. The decision made so long ago that it no longer presents itself as a decision, that its consequences have been so thoroughly normalised that they are simply features of the environment. The heads on the ice are furniture. They are the way things are, the background condition, the feature of the scene that you cease to notice because you have been skating past it for long enough. There is something specifically cold weather about this image, and it is deliberate. Cold preserves. Cold slows decomposition. Cold keeps things in the state they were in when the cold arrived. The heads on the ice are preserved, locked in their current state, potentially forever. The cold holds them there. The same cold that drives the skaters in circles keeps the evidence of the violence that put them there in pristine condition, visible and normalised and unburied. A frozen hell holds its evidence. It keeps everything. The ice holds everything exactly as it was, forever, and the skaters glide past the preserved evidence of what their world is and has always been, and they skate on, and they skate on, and the cold holds everything in place. Here is the uncomfortable truth that Bosch's triptych assembles piece by piece across its 3 panels. The fire hell is something that happens to you. The ice hell is something you arrive at. The fire hell requires an aggressor. It requires demons, torturers, an active divine judgment that translates sin into punishment. It is, despite its horrors, a relational hell. There are still other agents in it, still forces in relationship with the damned, still an encounter happening, still the structure of action and consequence. The ice hell has no aggressor, only the people skating in circles, the cold that is simply there, the heads on the ice that are simply there, the lake that is simply frozen. The skaters arrived here through the gradual cooling of a life that mistook motion for direction. And now they are here and the ice is very cold, and there is only the skating. This is why Bosch's frozen hell is more frightening than the fire. The fire demands a response. Even in hell, the fire demands attention, resistance, the maintenance of some minimal form of self in encounter with pain. The ice demands nothing. The ice simply is. The ice is the condition in which nothing is demanded, which is the condition in which the self has the least reason to continue insisting on itself. We are culturally very well equipped to recognize and fear the fire hell. We have millennia of theology, literature, art and moral philosophy preparing us to recognize dramatic suffering, dramatic wrongdoing, dramatic consequence. We are far less equipped to recognize the ice hell because the ice hell wears the face of Tuesday. It looks like Tuesday. It looks like the commute. It looks like the meeting about the meeting. It looks like skating.